Islam family, peace and love. Uh, I want to get into my topic today, but I want to preface it by saying, um, and not only giving this definition that I have here of dogmatic, but before that, I want to say that I am in no way against the Moral Science Temple of America, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, or the movement in any way. In fact, I am for it. I am also an assistant Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America, so I'm not attempting to break down the movement or the Temple of the Prophet in any type of way, but to show things that he actually did know, use, and implement, um, which gets me into this post that I have up here. To say the Prophet didn't bring that is dogmatic. Even though it may be true that he didn't teach a certain topic or use certain words specifically, it's dogmatic to assume that other Moors, something that other Moors teach is unjustified, especially since he alleged that even a half is not brought yet. So, we're dealing with that. Let's go into the definition of what dogmatic is. If you say that someone is dogmatic, you are critical of them because they are convinced they are right and refuse to consider that other opinions may be justified. Um, so by definition, um, it's basically saying, that someone is overly in their ego, basically, when it comes down to it. So, they're believing, something, anything, that may be law, outside of what I consider to be the prophet's canon, what he specifically taught, said, and used specific words. Um, if you try and go outside of those teachings, they like to say the prophet didn't bring that. Um, but that's dogmatic. It's very dogmatic because, like it says by definition, they're convinced that they're right and they refuse to consider that other options may be justified or other things in law may be correct, even though the prophet didn't use certain specific words, um, or talk about certain teachings. Um, even mentioning that, if he brought everything, we would fall back asleep at that time, because it was a different time and era, but we're in the information age and the age of I know and the Great Awakening. So it's not too much for this information to be brought out, and I want to get into the topic of commerce and what the prophet knew. So let's get into um, what most temple Moors know about, um, is the organization of the temple. This is document 1010, 509 or 55905. Excuse me. Now, at the top left, under corporations, religious. This is an affidavit of organization. So this is an affidavit in particular. It's stated in that particular form. Um, you know, with the state of Illinois, county of Cook, if you're familiar with affidavits, how they're styled, with the header, and we can even go down to the end of the document. You can see where it's notarized, sworn, and subscribed before the public notary. Um, uh, with that basically being a jurat and the prophet signing. So um, we know that this is, by definition, since it's signed by a public notary, it's a public document. It's an affidavit, um, which can or can not be, depending, um, be dealing with commerce. Um, but many more know, so I'm not gonna show this about the all caps being a straw man. Um, I have another video on this. You can check my channel over a year ago, Capitis Diminutio, and dealing with the different forms of a minima, media, and maxima. With maxima being the all caps straw man, being the greatest abridgment basically of status through capitalization, stating that basically it's implemented when you go from your a state of freedom to a state of slavery or bondage, almost word for word. Um, so, with that being stated, um, also I would state that Moors who actually know and deal in commerce and business in general in these senses know that when you set up an organization of any kind in these days, it's under what you consider commercial jurisdiction, as far as the public side of it when you do the filings and things of that sort. So um, everything will be in all caps because that is the only way the government can deal and things of that sort. So um, by we knowing what that means, we also know that there are ways to set up organizations, companies, trusts, businesses, things of that sort. That although they may have a public name, which is in all caps, that the organization is not necessarily encumbered. And it's because the status of that organization or company, trust, whatever it is, it has the proper status, so it's not necessarily encumbered being in all cap straw. Um, which is why Moors operate out of trust or a business as opposed to operating under the all cap straw of the birth certificate and the straw man, which by operating um, under that entity which you didn't set up, then that entity you could say is encumbered, but it doesn't necessarily mean that um, anything and everything styled in that manner is encumbered. And what I really want to point out, um, I'll say, is that the prophet knew this because um, when looking at this document, you know, and this is, the original file stamp copy, as we can see, from 1928. Um, so, with it being dated in July, right here we can see, starting with the I, Noble Drew Ali. We can see Moorish Science Temple of America, um, Sheiks, the Word, and these all typed in, which I'm speaking. Moorish Science Temple of America, Noble Drew Ali, E. Miliel, Ma L, Livid Bay, Foreman Bay. All of these are in all caps, showing that they were a corporation or an entity. And a trustee, which is crossed out, and sheiks is put in. Trustees can be entities. It can be an entity that is a trustee and not necessarily a natural person. But like I say, it doesn't necessarily mean that entity is encumbered. And I want to show and prove that because if you look further up and further below, there are many places showing where everything else pretty much is written as proper nouns. Even the Moorish Science Temple of America. So that's showing a public and private side or a commercial and an organic side because corporations can only recognize all caps as an entity and that they can interface with. So anything written as a proper noun, it wouldn't be able to receive um, as an interface, or it wouldn't be able to work with. So it can only deal in that realm. So when dealing in the public, you know, you could pretty much say that the prophet understood that concept and he used it, even though he may have not necessarily taught this in his canon of teaching. You know, you can clearly see, that there was where this was done. Um, I've had someone recently try and rebut this and say that the straw man, all caps, and all of that didn't start until 1933. But when you go to look up in Black's Law or any of these other dictionaries, because I've looked into Bouvier's as well, but excuse me, the capitis diminutio and the derivatives from it, the media, minima, and maxima, all come from Roman law, which predates the United States. So it had been used in use and applied before then. So this is not something necessarily new. This is something that was reinstated, you could say, 1933, um, around around the time when they started implementing birth certificates and things of that sort. But it's much older than that, and it's not my intention to prove that it necessarily in this video, but to show um, how the prophet implemented these things already. And it's right here in our faces. But if you never really look into the document in that way, you may have missed it. I did. I know initially it was pointed out to me by another Grand Sheik that I deal with. Not the Grand Sheik of my temple, but before we even started our temple, I had another Grand Sheik put me on to this, and I went back and checked and saw, that everything looked to check out with it. Like, I mean, there's even more I could break down in this document, but it doesn't go into the topic of today. Dealing with the fact that the prophet knew and used commerce and the principles of commerce. You could say, and there's no way of disproving, what I've just shown. The only thing other Moors might try and come back and do is say, well, he didn't mean it like that, or it was a typo, he accidentally left the all caps on, or, something silly like that there. But they're not going to have any proof in law, showing anything like what I've shown. There'll be no way of disproving that he didn't intentionally do this. And not only that, in other subsequent copies of this document, our authority on the back of everyone's 101s, uh, from what I've seen, even though they're ones issued from different grand bodies, they pretty much all um, follow the same format, because this was the original format of the document. And as you can see here, this is where it's file stamped in Cook County. It's long. So, any questions or comments on this here, you could definitely leave it below. If anyone has any conclusive knowledge that you could specifically cite sources to show me something different, I would be interested in checking that out. Um, it's just don't come with what I would say is legal theory. And legal theory is things that you could look up by definition, but at the same time, it doesn't apply for the use or usage in law. So, um, a legal theory, you could say, uh, is something like a black person. In law, we know that's a figment of your imagination. That black person, the only time it comes up in the actual usage, even though there are individual definitions of black and person in law, The only time it comes up in law together is in Dred Scott case when they said there's no significance of black person that has to be recognized in law. That would be a legal theory. So please go beyond just any definition in law or what you may think may be a definition in law, because I recently had someone try and say that it didn't apply because of what they were stating was capitis nolo, uh, which basically they're trying to say no capitalization. And I understand the legal theory behind it. The thing is, you can't find that together in the law dictionary. Not only that, you can't find that implemented or used anywhere together. It's another legal theory um, that doesn't deal in um, the actual law. When you look up in any law dictionary that I've seen, the capitis diminutio um, and its subsidiaries of the minimum, media, and maxima. Um, and if anybody can show and prove any differently, please do. But I have screenshots of this. I've put it on my Instagram. I've talked about this subject or that particular subject in the past over a year ago in a video with the capitis diminutio. So, um, you know, it's not much that really can be said to rebut this information. Um, but if anyone has anything they want to add, like I say, you could definitely leave it down below or send me an email. Islam family, peace and love. I'm out on this one.